A viewer of the channel asked me which Big Ten coaches are the most likely to be fired after 2025, which coaches are in a hot seat, warm seat, and I also decided I thought it'd be a fun idea to throw in some coaches that I think could be under pressure, whether competitive pressure or maybe they're teetering on being put under job security pressure. This question was asked by DeMoney5675, member of our Discord server. That's how he was able to ask me that question and for me to turn it into a video. If you want to ask me a question and have me make a video about it, click the link in the description to join the Discord server and navigate to the hashtag YouTube mailbox section, channel, whatever it's called, and type in a question that you want me to answer relating to college football, and I'll answer it in a video segment on my weekly Wednesday show, which I call a Withdrawal Wednesday. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell, like the video as it helps us get into the algorithm, and also comment your thoughts down below. That way I can reply to your comments, and that also helps us with our algorithm presence. First and foremost, I want to talk about coaches who I think are on the hot seat. That being Mike Locksley. Mike Locksley is on the hot seat because the best he has done at Maryland is 8 wins, which I think in the Big Ten with Maryland is a lot, but he's coming off of a 4-8 year where they were 1-8 in conference, had a 1-point win in their sole conference win over USC, and it was with a schedule that didn't include Michigan, didn't include Ohio State. They played Oregon on the road, and yes, they got Penn State too on the road, but they avoided Michigan, avoided Ohio State, and it kind of felt like they didn't take advantage of what was an advantageous schedule. I mean, they beat Virginia on the road. They beat their 2 garbage opponents, but they lost to Michigan State at home. They lost to Iowa with their 3rd-string quarterback at home. USC more so lost that game than Maryland won it. And then Maryland in the transfer portal under Locksley. People have talked about, oh, well, Locksley has this really good culture, and his players love him, and he has things set up for success, and he has stated before that his goal is to make his players into better men, not just better players, and he wants to run a developmental program. Well, when Levon Johnson is entering the portal after Tommy Aking-Basote and other players on Maryland's defense are already leaving because they've exhausted eligibility or go to the draft, when he transfers to Texas, when your quarterback Billy Edwards, your signal caller, a guy who's going to be relied upon as a leader because of his position, when he transfers out, when a plethora of other players transfer out, a player in Roman Hemby who was I don't think he was a true freshman, maybe a redshirt freshman in 2022 and had a phenomenal year as a youngster, as a newcomer to the game, new starting running back. When he leaves for Indiana, when Kellen Wyatt at edge leaves, and these guys were poised to start. If they came back to Maryland, they would have started. When they're leaving, and you did not have success last year, you were one of the worst teams in America. Your line of scrimmage play was putrid. That O-line may have been the worst O-line in college football. Some part of me thinks they have nowhere to go but up. But another part of me thinks with all that they're losing, with the changes they're making at quarterback, with how they have a commitment from Zion Ely, for example, best overall edge. They're going hard after Emmanuel Iheanacho. They got Malik Washington last year. Part of me almost feels like they're getting very, very risky with recruiting, and they're trying to get a bunch of star players and just sell out on a few in the NIL front, and they're just trying to do as much as they can so that, Locksley can stay, so that he can alleviate some pressure. It feels like anything Maryland does correctly or any good move they make right now is more like someone drilling a hole into someone's skull to relieve pressure than, let's say, going to the gym and having a good diet to actually build up strength and to become more competent. It feels like a panic move, even if it's something that's good. The good moves that Maryland has been making feel more of a panic move or a series of panic moves rather than strategic moves meant to build your character or a skill set or your intellect or your strength. It reeks of desperation. I think Locksley's on the hot seat. I think if they don't reach a bowl game, he's gone. and he should be gone. Last year for Maryland was worse than whatever happened with Wisconsin, even if you care more about how they ended the year than how they performed at the midpoint of the year in October, some games in November. It was more disastrous than what even happened with Michigan, and that was extremely disappointing. But yet again, Michigan had some bright spots. Maryland, even relative to their expectations, which were a lot lower than Michigan's, had no bright spots. It was worse than what happened with Rutgers, and Rutgers was blessed with an easier schedule than Maryland and completely choked it away. It's not good. Whatever's going on in College Park, I think, has run its course. It's not working. And I think there are coaches who could succeed in the, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia the DMV area, that could succeed there in recruiting, scouting, and development more than Locksley has, and more importantly than any of those things, because they're important. But if you do those things well, and then you can't put together those pieces to win games, and we've seen that with Locksley, where they've had some of these teams that are, top 25 in FPI, top 25 in the power ratings, like in 2022 and 2023, and they escape Northwestern, or they lose to Northwestern, or they lose to 5-7 Illinois, or they lose to a less talented Purdue team. I feel like this has run its course. So Locksley is absolutely on the hot seat. I don't think there's a question about that. Some coaches who are on a warm seat, not quite hot seat, but they could get fired after this year if everything goes south, but they don't have to dramatically overachieve compared to last year in order to save their job. I think there's a chance even if Locksley goes 6-6 this year, because the schedule, I talked about it in my Big Ten predictions. It's one of the easiest schedules in the Big Ten that Maryland has. I feel like if they even go 6-6, do you really want to keep Locksley around? Really? Especially since I'm anticipating some of the highly touted recruits they have to not stay committed there, and their class currently isn't all that good. And you've seen Mike Locksley teams, and the staff they have is just putrid, that Maryland does too. Sorry for any Maryland subscribers, because I know I have some, maybe even several. I think you deserve better. Just straight up. It was a disaster last year. And then the prior 2 years, while good, were underwhelming in a variety of ways as well. Some coaches on the warm seat: Lincoln Riley, Luke Fickell, Jonathan Smith. Now, I could also argue, or at least listen to the argument and be convinced by the argument, that Riley is just under competitive pressure. I know that every year they've regressed record-wise, and I do think that his seat certainly isn't cold after the recent results. But the staff he's put together, the moves that he's made, the fact that he's really only into year 2 of his tenure. It's year 4, I know, but firing Grinch, gutting that staff, bringing in Lynn, that was really a punching of the reset button. Like you didn't just hit it, you didn't just slap it. You broke the reset button when hitting that. I mean, that was a mental change for Lincoln Riley. That was a calculated, well thought out, painful decision for him, and it was a domino effect as well. The reason Benny Wiley is no longer USC's strength and conditioning coach is because Alex Grinch's tenure as USC's defensive coordinator was unacceptable, because the type of strength and conditioning that Benny Wiley runs is more about speed, is more about being fast and being that team that wins 52-45, which is not ideal for college football. You want to be so dominant and so big. You want to be big and fast. Think of the Michigan teams before last year, early 2020s under Harbaugh. Think of Ohio State every year under Ryan Day and Urban Meyer. Big, fast. Think of some Penn State teams recently where they've finally gotten big in the trenches and have some athletes here and there and everywhere on defense. Think of Oregon. Think of the SEC. Think of Texas, Georgia, Alabama. That's what you want. You do not want late 2010s Oklahoma. Late 2010s Oklahoma, if they defied the transfer portal rules and could recruit kids without paying them, well, that strategy would dominate because you'd have a depth advantage over everyone else, and you wouldn't have to worry about money, and you wouldn't have to have a general manager like everyone else. But you abide by the same rules everyone else does. You do, because no one's special. No one gets to operate in perfect conditions. So that decision was huge for Riley, and it's a long-winded way of saying, if you want to tell me he's in the next category, where he's just under competitive pressure and he has to get on the right track or break through in some way compared to either last season or compared to his entire tenure, then I will buy that. Same thing with Jonathan Smith, because he's entering year 2, he has a new AD, they're recruiting well, and I think everyone can understand, especially now that he has some recruiting momentum, which is going to give him brownie points, sympathy points, maybe empathy points, whatever you want to call it. I think most of Spartan Nation would even tell you that, yeah, he inherited a pretty crappy roster. So even though the Rutgers game and the Illinois game and the way the season ended wasn't good, it was very disheartening and disappointing, you can give him some grace there. There's no doubt, though, that Luke Fickell is on a warm seat. There's no doubt about that. He's entering year 3 with Wisconsin, and compare it to Matt Rhule, for example. Matt Rhule has had, on average, an easier schedule. Matt Rhule has trended up linearly. Fickell has trended down. Both have upgraded their recruiting and developmental profile compared to their predecessors, Paul Chryst for Luke Fickell and Scott Frost. Obviously, no duh in terms of an upgrade there from Frost to Rhule, but I strongly believe Fickell is an upgrade over Chryst. The issue is, everyone knew that Nebraska was sweat, was the type of sweat you get down there, if you know what I mean, after like a hard day's labor, and it stinks, it's bad, you want to get that off of you as quick, you want to shower yourself and wash that off. It's horrible. Everyone knew Nebraska was that. Everyone. What people didn't know is that Paul Chryst left Wisconsin, I think, culturally in a bit of a mess, and the development and the recruiting and the commitment just wasn't there. Fickell inherited a better situation than Rhule, which is why I think he is on a warm seat, even with the tougher schedules. He should be doing better at Wisconsin than he has over the past 2 seasons. But at the same time, he's been hit with very tough schedules, bad injuries, luck-wise at the quarterback position. Not his fault, not his staff's fault. He tried to change the offense. That was a mistake. And I kind of view him like I view Lincoln Riley, where in hiring Jeff Grimes and bringing in the portal class that he did, where they really tried to beef up the defensive front, and they got in Billy Edwards, who's a mobile QB, and a big guy too. Maryland used him a lot in 2023 for some quarterback runs, QB sneaks. He played in some games in 2022 when Tagovailoa was hurt, and he started last year. And I think that he's a good quarterback under good circumstances. And I think Wisconsin this year, compared to Maryland last year, will have a better, I would say, offensive line, way better O-line, and they will have better receivers than Maryland did. And I think they will have a better offensive coordinator and certainly a better defense. So it's a huge year for Luke Fickell, a massive year. I think that there's a world where they go 5-7 and they extend him if the team doesn't quit, if they do well in recruiting, if they get some players drafted, and if the team in a power rating sense is much better than it was last year. Because I think the schedule this year is harder than it was last year. I think if he goes bowling, he's definitely safe. If they go 7-5 with that schedule, which hint, hint, is my prediction for Wisconsin, in the same way that I'm predicting Maryland to have a losing record again and for Locksley to be gone, I think that he deserves to be in that conversation for Coach of the Year if they go 7-5. Talking about USC and Michigan State just a little bit more before we move on. Smith has to go to a bowl game, and I'd say with the schedule provided, the quarterback he has, and what he did in the portal, and also how good of a staff he has, I think 7 wins, whether it's 6-6 and you win the bowl game, or 7-5 regular season and then the bowl game's just kind of gravy and extra practices, 7 wins in a winning season would be so nice, and I think give him a lot of momentum, especially since Michigan State, out of, let's say, Riley, Fickell, and Rhule, and then you throw Smith in there. Smith inherited the worst situation out of all of them. Frost at least recruited, and some of his position coaches were competent. Some of them. Tucker didn't recruit as well as Frost did, and I think he had an even worse staff. Plus, Michigan State is not the caliber of program Nebraska is, so it's harder to rebound there. And you're competing with bigger schools, and those schools, you know what I'm talking about. Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Wisconsin, Illinois. You got Notre Dame, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio State. I mean, for a while there, Cincinnati and the American probably had the same program standing as Michigan State when Luke Fickell was there, for example. So there's a lot more competition there that is above you or could be at a similar level program standing-wise, resource-wise. Not the same case at Nebraska, for example. Not the same case with Wisconsin. Certainly not the same case with USC. So Smith, I think, needs to be given a leash. I think he has one, but there's no doubt that there is some competitive pressure there, and I would put him on the warm seat just due to how last season finished. I think that Lincoln Riley needs to at least win 8 games for his seat to cool off a little bit and for him to continue to have the buy-in that he's clearly earned in the 2025 preseason this past winter and spring. I think he got a lot of buy-in, a lot of alignment. If he wants that to continue and he wants these players to be excited about playing for him, go out there and win 8 games at the minimum, but preferably win 9, win 10. Like, enter that Oregon game in late November on the road where you are a playoff contender, and if you win that game, you're in, type of deal. And last but not least, I want to talk about some coaches who are under pressure. I think Sherrone Moore, Matt Rhule, and James Franklin are coaches under some type of pressure. Of course, Ryan Day at Ohio State, you're always going to be under pressure. You're the head coach at Ohio State. But that's just the nature of the game. It is. That is purely competitive pressure. Ryan Day could go 9-3 this year. I mean, heck, he could go 8-4 this year, and he would not be on the hot seat the following year. Any of these coaches, they could have a disappointing year, and because they haven't won a title, because they don't have an insanely high win percentage and aren't recruiting at a top 5 level every year, Ryan Day fulfills all those categories. He's a top 2 head coach in football for a reason. They will be on the hot seat. And these coaches are Sherrone Moore, Matt Rhule, James Franklin. I don't know about hot seat, but he would certainly be under a very strange competitive pressure, I think. I think this is a national title or bust year for Penn State. If they don't win it all, you have to win the Big Ten, and you probably have to beat Ohio State. Or if you don't win it all or don't beat Ohio State, I think regardless, the season's a disappointment. Even if you win the Big Ten, beat Oregon by even 100 points, you win all your playoff games except for the national title game, and you still win the Big Ten, I think the season would be a bit of a disappointment with how much they're bringing back and how much they've invested. They want to win. They need to win. So James Franklin is under pressure. And let's say Penn State goes 10-3 this year. They go 10-2. They lose in the first round of the playoffs. He should be out if they do that with all that they have brought back. I mean, that would be an absolutely catastrophic season for Penn State. Absolutely catastrophic if they were to lose 3 games in their 2 biggest games, losing. If they were to lose 3 games, period, I feel like it'd be catastrophic because they went 13-3 last year. You can't repeat that with all you've brought back. That's all I'll say on James Franklin, though. If there was anyone on this list of being under pressure that I would take off, it would be Franklin because I feel like Franklin's pressure is more competitive pressure, and unless the unthinkable happened, he won't be on the hot seat next year. He might be on the warm seat, but hot seat, I just, it's weird. I mean, I don't think Ryan Day would have been fired last year if he beat Tennessee and then lost to Oregon. Or even if he lost to Tennessee, I don't know if he would have been fired. So then to say James Franklin would be fired or would be on the hot seat if he went 10-3, which is what Ohio State would have been if they lost to Tennessee, then I'm saying Penn State is the expectations of Ohio State. And maybe with Pat Kraft, they're closer, but I still don't think that's the case. So Franklin's under competitive pressure, but I think it's intense, especially with the fact he hasn't won the Big Ten or beaten Ohio State in a decade now. And yet he's had the opportunity to compete for those things every year, and he's always been in the conversation. It's time to break through. For Sherrone Moore, you cannot lose 5 games again. This schedule is the easiest in the Big Ten, maybe by a country mile. You can't lose 5 games. You can't do it, especially with the massive upgrade at quarterback. Underwood, with the talent he has, with Chip Lindsey as his OC, with what the O-line brings back, with the running back room and the additions that Michigan has made there, with their incoming recruiting class, which, look, most classes don't have a strong effect in their first year on campus. I'm not saying Michigan's will, but Underwood was a part of the class, and if that type of recruiting continues, they'll level up their talent profile more than what they had even in 2023 or 2022 just by raw high school rankings. So you can't lose 5 games. That's unacceptable. Lose 5 games, you'll be on the hot seat. Maybe you'll even be fired. I don't know. Because the standard at Michigan is winning the Big Ten, winning national championships. I mean, people joke about how before, Michigan in 2021, 2022, and 2023, they were really just, 8-4 program. You shouldn't expect anything more. Well, no, that's ridiculous. Like, yes, they went 8-4 a bunch of those years and struggled, but that doesn't mean that should be the standard. Like, should Nebraska's standard be 5-7? It's a ridiculous argument. Anyone who says that is intellectually moronic and broken. You can't lose 5 games. I would say losing 4 games in the regular season would be a massive disappointment. This roster, with the quarterback, with the potential it has, with what they bring back on defense, I know they lose a lot on defense, but losing those players on defense should not offset the gains made at quarterback and on offense. It shouldn't. The gains on offense should offset the losses on defense. And the defense still returns the majority of its production because they return almost the entirety of the defensive backfield. Linebackers, DBs, they return 3 out of their 4 defensive ends in the 2-deep. So Michigan should have a big year this year. They should. And it's similar with Nebraska, not in the same way. By Michigan having a big year, I mean they should win 10 games. They should go 10-2 in the regular season, if not 11-1. 9-3, 12-0 are both more likely than 6-6. And I would say even more so than 7-5 not because Michigan is this top 5 team. I don't think they're close to that, but because of the schedule and how it aligns with Michigan's roster, how the teams on the schedule align with Michigan's roster. For Nebraska, it's pretty similar. They just don't have the expectations Michigan does, and that's understandable. They don't have the roster talent. They're coming off of a far worse stretch than Michigan's ever experienced, even in the Rich Rod and Hoke years. And I think that they got to win 8 games. They have to in order for Rhule to have total buy-in, for us to know that he's taking Nebraska in the right direction. By right direction, I mean competing for the college football playoff more years than not. If they win 7 games this year, it's a linear improvement, but I don't know. With this schedule, they should win more than 7 games because losing 5 games means you have a losing record in Big Ten Conference play, and that's with Dana Holgorsen at OC. That's with Rhule entering year 2. That's with a talent roster that, look, I mean, they play Cincinnati, Akron, Houston, Christian. You're more talented than all those teams. You're not more talented than Michigan, but you're more talented than Michigan State, more talented than Maryland, more talented than Northwestern. You are more talented, not than USC, but you are more talented than UCLA, not Penn State, but you're more talented than Iowa. You will be more talented by recruiting rankings than 8 of your opponents. And Michigan is not invincible. USC is not invincible. Penn State is not. Well, Penn State's not. Probably not invincible because Invincible's 2001 Miami, but Penn State on the road's the closest thing to invincible. Michigan, USC, and Penn State are the only teams that will be more talented than you. maybe Iowa if you want to factor in development. So that's 8, 9 teams. I don't know why I initially said 8 for high school recruiting rankings, but 8, 9 teams. You will have more roster talent then. And you'll have more depth than a lot of those teams I listed as well, even when factoring in development. And Michigan won't have their head coach when they visit you. USC is going to be traveling across the country to visit you, and they have pretty similar roster talent to you. It's a little bit higher, but not by much. Nebraska should expect to win 8 games. And 9, maybe you can expect to win 9. Anything past that I think is gravy and would be an absolutely phenomenal year. And I think that with this schedule, Nebraska can compete for a college football playoff spot. If everything clicks, they could compete for a home college football playoff spot. That's all I have to say here on this segment, looking at Big Ten coaches who are under pressure, maybe under the hot seat, or just a warm seat that could slide back to just being under pressure or slide up to being on the hot seat. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe,